Okay, great. Good evening and welcome to today's class. We'll be looking at organizational context and leadership today. But then let's see if we have any question. Any question from the last class or from the previous classes that we've been having? Any concern so far? Any question? Any question? Okay. So that shows that last class and other classes have been clear. Okay. Emike, Anna, please tell us what your take home was in the last class. Do you have Emike on this call? Okay. Let's have Alunge Peter. What was your take home from the last class?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Kenny. Last class we died because of my network. I think I did post it in the chat because there was a back and forth. It was not really good, but I think the little bit I was able to like get in the class was when we were talking about the internal and external that benefits. When you were giving example with the cream production of the cream and selling. Yeah, so I was able to take home the fact that no matter what, you have to factor in the external bodies that will benefit from the business as well. But be it business, be it you're doing that for your company, be it for your personal self as well. You have to factor that there are guidelines, there are regulations, and there are rules that you must follow to make sure everything is in place. So your company or your business doesn't come to a point of non-conformity.
Okay. That's a good one. So let's have one. Elsie, can you tell us what your take home was?
Okay, so we looked at leadership, how we need leadership cooperation in order for whatever we're trying to achieve to work. Because if you don't have their cooperation or their go ahead, you might run into problems.
Okay. All right. That's good from Peter, and that's also great from Elsie. In the last class, we looked at the structure of the standard. We looked at the structure again, even though we've been talking about the structure of the standard from the first class. And we look at the structure of the standard, and then we delve deep into what the 27,001 is. We looked at the management clauses, which is clause 4 to 10. And then we looked at the annex controls also. We just talked about them in a brief. And I used the cream business as a case study, a scenario to explain what 27,001 is all about. And it's not implemented beyond that, even though there are lots of processes, lots of controls, lots of procedures, policies that guides the framework. So today we want to go straight into looking at it, even though I've talked about them, right? I know that I talked about clause 4 at length. However, we want to start with clause 4 and then we'll go on to clause 5 today. By Saturday, we should be able to do clause 6 and probably clause 7. By Sunday, we should be able to finish up the management clauses and maybe touch some annex controls. If not, we'll finish the annex controls by next Monday. All right, so once we finish the annex control by Monday, we are good to go, and then we'll select we'll have our exam in between the week. We'll communicate before then, and then we should be able to close up the project by next week Friday. Next week Friday is my birthday, so I'd like everybody to write that exam on that day. All right, so once you to go through the what's it called? Pass the mock exam. I think you should be good to go also. So we'll set a pass mark. Once you hit that pass mark, we'll pick the best three. Pick the best three. So my team knows how to manage that. And then other criteria that we have been monitoring so far during the course of the training. So we'll go straight into +4. The truth is, there is no, even though I'm able to I used to say, not to be proud, but I used to say I'm one of the best trainers you are going to meet. Why? Because I've implemented, I've audited, I know how this thing works, even though I'm still learning and I'm still growing. Also, I'm unlearning and relearning too. But then, even though I've been able to analyze and then dissect the training for you in a way that you will understand, how you get to get better in implementation is in doing it. All right. So within your organization, you want to maybe move close to the compliance team or move close to a management person, let them know that, oh, you know this thing, like, oh, you have an understanding about this thing, you would like to learn, ask questions, right? Where your own process also sits, ensure that there are security controls requirements. So all of those policies that they give to you, those procedures, those things that they tell you to do, start seeing the reason for those things now, and then start aligning them to what we have. Yeah, you can request for your company's context. If your company has implemented 27,001 before, meet your ISMS manager, tell them that you would like to see your context document. Start, viewing it and start having an understanding of why things are done, the way things are done. That is where you see your company's strategic objective, a lot of other things that you will not even know exist, right? So and that is how you get better in this implementation beyond the training, right? Just to give us that. So I'm not going to go, there is no way I can go very, very in depth because this is a training for a few weeks. However, I can assure you that with what you have been taught, if you can go back to the video, if you have questions, you can always reach out, and then I can assure you that you are good to go. So we want to look at clause 4 and clause 5 today, right? Clause 4, I think somebody is unmuted. Can the person mute? Clause 4, context of the organization. And then under clause 4, we have 4 subclauses. Clause 4.1 talks about understanding the organization and its context. That is where you need to identify your internal and external issues, right, that can affect your business. Clause 4.2 talks about understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. I use Speed Darlington as a case study in interested parties, and I said interested parties can either be internal or external, right? They can be internal or external, and interested parties are people that can affect your organization or people that your organization's decision can affect. Those are the people we call interested parties. This is a typical exam question, right? And then, yeah, you're getting small expo. So we have clause 4.3, determining the scope of the information security management system. This is where you identify the coverage of the ISMS, where you want that ISMS to cover. And then when we get to that, to look at that. So let me use the material to teach us this, and then we can go on from there. Now, you cannot talk about, you cannot just jump straight to saying you want to identify a company's internal and external issue without first understanding the mission, the vision, the objectives, the strategies of the organization. These are things that in some way inform internal and external issues, right? And then you'll be able to identify those issues and put actions in place to close those issues. Clause 4.1 says the organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affect. Now, this affecting, right? This affect here is not negative. These issues here is not negative. It can either be risk or opportunities. Now, let me give a typical example. A company's internal issue can be, let's say, okay, let me use external issue. Let's say your company's external issue is changes in government policies. That's an external issue. You do not have strength, you do not have power rather over that. if Tinubu comes today and says there's a new requirement, there's a new policy that every company must follow, you don't have a choice because you belong to this nation, you must do it. So that's a typical external issue, changes in government policies or government relations. Now, that is an external issue. From that external issue, there can be risk. The risk can be if you do not fulfill the requirements of that new policy that Tinubu just brought up, they can yank you off. They can stop you from doing business, seize your license. That's a risk. Also, there is an opportunity there because if you fulfill the requirement of that policy that Tinubu is just bringing out, it will make businesses, your clients, to want to do business, to want to partner with you because they see that you are in compliance with regulatory requirements and legal requirements where applicable. So they want to do business. So you can see that an issue can either be positive, can bring risks, or can bring opportunities. There are also some issues that can bring only risks. There are some issues that can bring only opportunities, right? So, and then you can identify those issues because when you get to clause 6.1.1, actions to address risk and opportunities, that is where you start planning for the ISMS. Start putting risk assessment in place, and then you look for controls for the risks that you have identified, and then you look for a way to exploit those opportunities. Now, from those issues, once you see an opportunity from an issue, you exploit it, and then you take it. But let's come back home. 4.1, talking about internal and external issues, that you as an organization should identify those issues that are relevant to your purpose and then will affect the ability to achieve the intended outcome for the information security management system. Clause 4.2, I explained clause 4.2 at length yesterday. I talked about interested parties. So clause 4.2 is saying identify interested parties because you cannot just jump and start implementing 27,001. Who are the interested parties within the organization that is relevant to your information security management system? What are their requirements? What are the things that they need for you to do? I said yesterday that about 2 years ago, CBN revoked 1,000 license of BEDC, people that we call Bureau de Change. Why? Because they did not fulfill AML requirements. AML is anti-money laundering because they use some of these guys to launder money. So they restricted, they collected, they stopped them from doing business, right? 1,000 BEDC. Imagine that you have a business and then they stop you from doing business license. Why? Because they did not identify the requirements of that interested party, who is the CBN. And I mentioned yesterday that external interested party in some cases are very, very powerful because there's nothing you can do about them. We have activists also. Now, remember something that happened some time ago where this David Undein guy was talking about Nestu and some other people too, saying how Nestu is financing terrorism, right? And we saw all of those on Twitter. That person is an activist. However, is an external interested party to the business, to Nestu. Because whether you see it or not, it is those that are following stocks and maybe what was this called, financial information that these people put on their website, that we know that that thing affected the business at that particular time. Because consciously and subconsciously, some people will not buy from Nestu at that time. You say, oh, these people are financing terrorism. Why? Because an activist said so. So you can see that we have internal interested parties, external interested parties. And then the standard wants you to identify all of them so that you will be able to meet their needs and expectation. In that case of David Inde, you will see that Nestu now started coming up with publication. Oh, we've been doing this for the years, blah, blah, blah. We did not finance any terrorism. That is an action to now address that risk from that interested parties. Because by the time we get to clause 6.1.1 planning, it says when you are putting action in place to address risk and opportunities, identify the issues in clause 4.1, identify the requirements in clause 4.2. Because by the time you are able to identify the issues, internal and external, the requirements in your clause 4.2 also, you'll be able to put appropriate actions in place to address the risks and the opportunities, exploit opportunities from your internal and external issues and from your interested parties. So you need to identify those people that are interested party to you as an organization, and then you need to identify their relevant requirements, put efforts in place to ensure that you meet their needs and expectation. All right. Okay. Let's go on. Okay. So I talked about you when you want to go into the implementation of clause 4. You don't just jump straight into starting with the internal and external issues. Look at the left-hand side. You need to identify the mission, the values, the strategies, the objectives of the organization, because all of this together with the organization's policy are what builds up and informs the information security management system and informs security requirements within the business. Now you can now see that there is an information security objective on the right hand side that you are going to align strategically. So if you do not identify the mission, value, strategy, company's objective, there is no way you'll be able to carry out a strategic alignment with the information security objective. Let me give you a typical example. Let's say, let me pick, let's say Oreoluwa's company. Let's say Oreoluwa group of companies. One of their strategic, okay, Oreoluwa, give me one strategic objective. Like, just think about something like a strategic objective.
To be a leading law firm in Nigeria.
You say what?
To be a leading law firm in Nigeria.
Be a leading law firm in Nigeria. Very beautiful. Fantastic strategic objective. Now, we have identified the company's objective. If I am implementing for Oreoluwa's company, I can suggest, based on that strategic objective that I have reviewed, I can suggest that, okay, Oreoluwa, you know what? There are some information security objective that I think we can align with your strategic objective. And then I want you to review and approve. And do you know, one of the information security objectives I will suggest would be, we want to be 100% compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. Now, that is an information security objective that I've aligned with the strategic objective that Oreoluwa mentioned. How will that security objective help that strategic objective in becoming the number one law firm? Because if Oreoluwa's company do not comply with legal, regulatory, and contractual requirements, did not comply with their client's contractual requirements, they are breaching SLA, did not comply with legal requirements, did not comply with regulatory requirements in the field that they belong to, you will see that they will have bad image, and then people will not be able to do business with them. And if people do not want to do business with them, that strategic objective that they have identified, which is to be a leading law firm, they will not be able to hit that strategic objective. So you can see that there is need for an understanding of the company's objective, mission, strategy, value, before you are able to identify relevant information security objective. When we get to clause 6.2, you will see it. Because in clause 6.2, you have to identify, come up with relevant objectives that you can align with that strategic objective. Let's use another example. Folashade Adepoju, can you give us one strategic objective for your company for the year 2026? For the company you are going to build in 2026? Can you give us one strategic objective? What comes to mind?
Oh, okay. I'm thinking to be to okay, I don't know what to think. Okay, I think to be one of the leading governance and risk compliant agencies.
Don't use leading again. Don't use leading again.
Okay.
Look for something else.
To be okay, It has to be leading. I'm thinking of something else.
Okay, let me just give one, right? I want us to relate. That's what I'm telling us to bring up. Okay, what if you want to have an annual turnover of $100 million?
Yeah, that's true.
That is strategic. If you don't like money, so that's a strategic objective. Now you want to have an annual turnover of $100 million. Okay, what security objective can we coin? Okay, we can say improve security processes up to 80%. Let's say your security processes are very maybe 10% within the organization. Now improve security processes up to 80%. Now you can see that I am adding numbers there. Why? Because your objective has to be measurable. And then you are going to have KPIs to measure those objectives that will show that you have achieved the information security objective, which in turn is helping you achieve your strategic objective. Now, if you are putting security controls in place up to 80%, so to improve, I said to improve security processes up to 80%. Now, let's say you are okay, let's say you are any company in any jurisdiction, and then you are building applications. Or let's say, okay, you build applications and you sell applications. Now, if the application do not go through proper secure development lifecycle from conceptualization up to disposal, right? You will see that applications that are not tested, applications that are not well developed, that did not go through proper testing, proper change management process, proper release and deployment processes, proper disposal when not in use, there will be issue when your vendors are using them. So if you improve your security processes and then you put secure development processes in place, you have policies, they follow best practices, that in turn will improve the organization and that will help you achieve that strategic objective that I just talked about. So you can see how there is an alignment between your information security objective and your strategic objective. And this is why you need to understand the organization's context before you implement the IS-27,001. You don't just jump into implementing. Before you start talking about internal and external issues, clause 4.1, what are the missions of the company? What are the values? What are their core values? What do they sit for? What are their strategies? What are their objectives? These are things that will help you identify and know the kind of business that you are dealing with, right? So determining ISMS objective. When we get to clause 6.2, I don't want to dwell too much on this. When we get to clause 6.2, now identify and analyze business requirements. Okay, so we are talking about this one is speaking to clause 4.2, internal and external interested parties, right? Identify and analyze business requirements. So external, we have laws and regulations, we have markets, right? So external, we have laws and regulations, we have standards. So laws and regulations are mandatory. So remember I mentioned that there are internal and external issues, internal and external interested parties. So you need to analyze the environment of the organization to identify their internal and external issues and external interested parties, right? So you can see that from this image, externally, we have standards, laws, and regulations. Now, laws and regulations are mandatory. You don't have a choice. You cannot sit in the table to discuss with them that you don't want this. If CBN says we want this, you must do it. If CBN wakes up tomorrow, sorry that I'm using CBN, I work with fintech a lot, like that's the space that I work with the most. So that's why I'm using CBN. But we have other regulators, so you can just think about that also. So if CBN wakes up today and says no bank should implement 27,001, I know that this is not possible. But let's just say they wake up to tomorrow and say they should not implement it. See, you are not going to implement it, or you don't have a choice. Why? Because they are the law and they are the regulators. So it is mandatory, you must do it. Standards are external also. However, standards are voluntary. This 27,001 that you are looking at is voluntary, it's not by force. However, laws and regulation can mandate standards. That's why CBN is saying all fintechs, you must do 27,001. So laws and regulation can mandate standard. For instance, in the UAE, right? If you want to become a PSSP, a payment service solution provider, you must use a cloud service provider that has an availability zone in their domain, in their jurisdiction. If you are not using a cloud service provider that has an availability zone in their jurisdiction, you cannot become a PSSP. Now, that is voluntary. You can choose any cloud service provider. However, law and regulation of that jurisdiction has mandated that you must use a cloud service provider that's an availability zone there. And then we have internal, so contractual obligations that you have signed with interested parties. This is also mandatory. With your clients, with your vendors, it's mandatory. But policies are voluntary. However, voluntary policies also can be mandated by management requirements. Top management can mandate policies, say, oh, this thing must be done. Right. So this is just to help us also analyze and identify internal and external issues and interested parties. So in most countries, the implementation of an ISO standard is a voluntary decision, not a legal requirement. But it says, in all cases, laws take precedence over standards. So that means a law can mandate a standard. Also, standard talks about confidentiality. 27,001 talks about confidentiality. But law can come tomorrow and tell you, we need to know that information. You as an auditor, the court can tell you to come and release that audit report that you have sworn that you will keep confidential. However, because law and regulations takes precedence over standard, you have no choice. You need to state that out. Right. Sorry, where am I? Okay, yeah. Okay, so law and regulatory conformity, blah, 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 we can read that. Now, I've talked about clause 4.1 and 4.2. Let's talk about clause 4.3. Scope of the ISMS. Now, scoping is important. Very, very important. All right. So scoping is very important because scoping helps you identify the boundaries and applicability of the ISMS. Because the ISMS may necessarily not cover, I don't know why this thing is taking me to this day two objective. Can you see can everyone see my screen?
No, sir.
Please let me stop.
I can see.
I can see your screen.
Okay, but what is sharing is not what is supposed to be sharing. Okay, great. Now, scoping is very important in the implementation of the ISO 27001. It defines the boundary and applicability of the information security management system. Now, imagine that a bank like UBA or a bank like FCMB implementing ISO 27001, they now put all their physical location under the scope of the ISMS, all physical location. So let's assume, I don't know the amount of offices that they have. So let's assume they have 300 office outlets all over Nigeria. So it means all outlets will be audited. At least 40 out of those 300, if not more than, must be audited. Why? Because they are under the boundary and applicability of the ISMS. So because businesses have understood that if the scope is not properly identified, right, there can be issues, wastage of energy, resources, and time. So what will a bank like UBA or FCMB do? They will put the head office, the physical location, under the scope, physical boundary, because we have different boundaries. I will explain them as we go on. They put the physical location, the head office, under the scope of the ISMS, and they will exclude other physical location. So that exclusion means only that head office is auditable. And what is that trying to say? You will see that all other branches, they feed from the head office in terms of data, in terms of network, in terms of resources, whatever. But it is possible that there is one particular physical location in UBA that is doing something that is not done in the head office. Let's say there's a process that they are managing that is not managed within the head office. UBA can now put that one branch office also under the scope of the information security management system. Boundaries and applicability. It helps you to identify what boundary. You have a lot, you have servers, right? However, you have critical servers, you have mid-critical servers, you have less critical servers, you have servers that they really do nothing to you as a business. So you can choose that within your information system boundary, you are not going to put servers that really have no risk to your business under the scope of the information security management system. Also, AWS. You are using AWS as a cloud infrastructure. But because AWS also is in compliance with relevant standards and requirements, like there's 27,001 and the likes, you are not putting AWS under the scope of your information security management system. Some businesses can put few products, some can put few services under the scope, some can put everything under the scope of the ISMS, right? So, but when you want to identify your scoping, it is important that you meet an expert to help you identify appropriate scoping to put relevant so that you can have proper scoping in place, right? So, so this is talking about internal. Please let's read this document too. This is talking about internal and external issues, right? So how you can see, you can use PESTO analysis, you can use SWOT analysis to identify internal and external issues. You can see. So and then I talked about this yesterday. This one is on clause 4.1. Right. So internal context, blah blah blah. And read this. So now in identifying the scope, you can look at the business processes, assets in scope. So infrastructure also in scope. I talked about physical boundaries, organizational boundaries, and technological boundaries. Those are the three boundaries that you need to put under the scope of the ISMS. So which hardware do you want to put under the scope, which software, which network, which sites? That's your physical boundary. So are you putting any third-party supplier under the scope? Right. So I went to audit a data center last year because a company puts the data center under the scope of their information security management system, and then I went to carry out that audit, right? So, and then this is talking about interested parties. So you can see how to identify interested parties. This is 4.2. Financial institution, providers, board of directors, employees. Those are internal interested party, management team, internal interested parties, union, external interested party, legislators, media, public, shareholders, interest group, blah blah blah. They are external interested parties, right? And then you understand, you identify their requirements. I've talked about this. Don't need to spend too much time on that. So please just read the material. I can't go to everything at a go. Do we have any question before I go on? Any question on clause 4? Any question? Any question? So are we following? I need to get reactions from us if you are following. Are we following? Are we following?
Yes, we're following.
Okay. Okay. So let me go to leadership, clause 5, so that I can release us to go and rest for. Let me see. Where do I have that? Okay, this is it. Leadership. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about context of the organization, which is a critical part of this implementation, and then we are going into we are going into hold on, please. Okay, so we are looking at leadership. Now, I'm going to skip some parts there. This project approval part, you can read up on that. So what project approval is talking about is, let's say you want to implement ISO 27001 in a new company, and then maybe they are not even regulated. Maybe there is no regulator that is telling them that they must implement it. And then you see the need to implement information security within that organization. And they are telling you, okay, what are the benefits? Why are we implementing it? So you come up with a business case. You present your business case. Your business case contains what the 27001 is all about, threats to the business if they don't implement it, the cost, the project timeline, and a lot of other things. And then you get project approval. So that's typically what that project approval part is talking about. But in most cases, you will see that 27001 is driven from regulatory need, and then maybe from management need. And then you see that in most cases, you don't need any project approval to implement 27001. You just go straight to implementation. But what is needed is leadership commitment, clause 5, which is what we want to look at now. So where is that slide? Okay, yeah, I'm here. Okay, clause 5.1. Let me do something. Let me call someone. Michelle Emmanuel. Emmanuel, can you read clause 5.1 to us and then tell us your understanding?
Okay. Clause 5.1 says top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the information security management system by A, ensuring the information security policy and the information security objective are established and are compatible with the strategic direction of the organization. B, ensuring the integration of the information security management system requirements into the organization's process. C, ensuring that the resources needed for the information security management system are available. D, communicating the importance of effective information security management and of conforming to the information security management system requirements. E, ensuring that the information security management system achieves its intended outcomes. F, directing and supporting persons to contribute to the effectiveness of the information security management system. G, promoting continual improvement. And H, supporting other relevant management roles to demonstrate their leadership as if applies to their areas of responsibilities. So basically what I understand from this is this clause is trying to explain to us the responsibilities of the leadership team in the implementation of ISMS in a particular organization. Considering the fact that this is the leadership team, they are to set the tone at the top and expect the subordinates to follow suit. For instance, looking at H, it says supporting the other relevant management roles to demonstrate their leadership as it applies to their areas of responsibility. So in this particular part, it's trying to make us understand that it is the function of the leadership team to give the direction and make sure that other sub-leaders are supporting the implementation of the ISMS in the particular organization. And also for A, it says ensuring the information security policy and the information security objective are established and are compatible with the strategic direction of the organization. So for me, my understanding of that is before the implementation begins, the leadership team is to review and ensure that the ISMS aligns with the strategic direction of the organization, just like what was mentioned earlier in class about putting the strategic direction and aligning it with this with the ISMS that is about to be implemented.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Mane. That's great. Okay, so clause 5 is talking about leadership. And then under clause 5, we have 3 subclauses. 5.1 talks about leadership and commitment. 5.2 talks about policy. 5.3 talks about organizational rules, responsibilities, and authorities. Now, the standard is clear. What do we want top management to do? 5.1 says, top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the information security management system by doing what? Number one, ensure that the information security policy and information security objective are established. Clause 5.2 is talking about information security policy. Clause 6.2 is talking about information security objective. So what the standard wants to be, the content of information security policy and information security objective are already documented in your standard. Let me quickly, so I'll just switch. So you can see what the standard is saying, what they want to be in that policy. That policy, what 5.1a is saying, that top management should ensure that the information security policy and the objectives are established. They did not say top management should be the one to establish it, because in some cases, it is the ISMS manager or the compliance person that will build this policy. But top management will ensure that the policy is reviewed and approved. But then the standard now states what should be in that policy here in 5.2, and then what should be in the objective here in 6.2. You can see information security objectives and planning to achieve them. Standard is very, very clear, right? So B says ensuring the integration of the ISMS requirements into the organization's process. Now, Annex 6 talks about people control. You are not going to employ another person to come and implement people control for you. You don't need to do that. The standard says integrate the requirements of information security management system into the organization's process. You already have an HR that manages people. Integrate the requirement of the ISMS into the already existing process of the HR. If your company develop application, there's a secure development life cycle, a process within the technological control. You are not going to employ another person to manage that process. Integrate that requirement into your organization's process. Clause 9.3 says carry out management review. It is not until you bring top management to a separate meeting before you know that you have done management review. Integrate the requirement of the standard into the existing process, in the sense that maybe there is a management meeting that you do quarterly. You can have ISMS as a standing agenda in that meeting. That's talking about integrating. So it is saying, do not implement the ISO 27001, the information security management system, in silo. Do not implement it separately and apart from the organization. Integrate both their requirements and let it be a culture. And management should be the one to ensure that. Also, it says ensuring that the resources needed for the ISMS are available. Resources in terms of availability for key management processes. Resources in terms of technological controls that needs to be in place. In terms of people, capacity requirements, competence also, right? So these are relevant resources that management needs to make sure is available. Also communicating the importance of effective information security management and of conforming to the information security management system requirements. How will management communicate the importance of an information security management system? If management attends awareness that all staff attends, that is communication. Management leads from the top. Management can also send a letter at the process of implementation to say, everybody, we need to sit up. We are implementing ISO 27001. So and so person will drive it. Everybody needs to follow this. Everybody needs to do that. That's another communication. E says ensuring the information security management system achieve its intended outcome. Right? When processes are in place, when resources are in place, when management communicates, the importance of the ISMS, it helps to achieve the intended outcome. And then F says direct and support persons. F and H is saying almost the same thing. Support other relevant management roles, because the standard knows that management cannot do everything. So it's saying management should ensure that they direct and support relevant people that can drive security control, security initiative within the organization, because in some cases, there can be friction. Some staff may not want to follow some certain rules, but management should ensure that they drive and demonstrate their leadership as they support those responsibilities. The management should ensure that they promote continual improvements within the organization. Right. So that's what 5.1 is talking about. So leadership and project approval, I'll skip it. I've talked about it. Creating a business case, I've explained it. You can read up on that. So these are some roles, ISMS project manager, blah blah blah. And read up on those. Right. So clause 5.3 talks about roles, responsibilities, and authorities. And this is where I'm going to wrap up tonight. We can read up on the document. So what 5.3 is talking about is management should assign relevant roles and responsibilities for reporting on the performance of the ISMS. So people that will implement the ISMS, the person that will audit it, the people that will manage different processes, right? So those relevant roles need to be appointed, and that is what the standard is talking about. And then you as an implementer, there should be evidence of appointment, right? So relevant letter to those people that have been appointed beyond their JD. Let's say you're appointing an ISMS manager, there should be a letter from HR to the person that says, oh, you have been appointed to lead the implementation of the ISMS. The same thing with the auditor. The same thing with maybe the incident manager, with the change manager. Those relevant roles need to be spelled out, and then management needs to support, right, the implementation of the information security management system, right? And then clause 5.2 is basically just talking about what the policy should contain. So the policy should be appropriate to the purpose of the organization, should include information security objectives. So inside of this policy, that security objective that you are going to identify or coin out in your clause 6.2, it is saying document it in your clause 5.2 policy document. Also in that document states that you are committed to satisfy applicable requirements. Also in the document states that you are committed to continual improvements. And then once you have done that, ensure that it's available as a documented information. We can see it. Ensure that you communicate with all staff, because it should be an internal or public document, and then it should be available to interested parties. Maybe you can put it on your website. You can communicate to other interested parties, like maybe when CBN or other regulators request from you, and then you have fulfilled the requirement of clause 5, right? So today we've looked at clause 4, optional context, and then you have looked at clause 5, leadership, right? So if you have questions, I'll take your questions before we call it a night. If you have any question, any question? Any question? Any question? Any question from anyone? So Miracle, are you saying the class is clear? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
All right. So in the absence of questions or no question, we'll call it a night. I will upload this recording also. Do we have a hand? Yes, Peter.
Thank you very much for today. Thank you for the insightful point. This is more like a personal question, also relating to what we've done today. It's just me trying to put some things together. Okay, let's take for example, there's a business, probably in the US or the UK. Then I stay in another part of the world. Let's say I stay in the Middle East, probably Qatar or UAE or anywhere, and I want to get a franchise of the business that is in the US, have the same franchise of that business in the Middle East. I stand to be correct. I want to get some. There are some parts where let's say in the UAE, the standards are different. Like it's optional, it's not compulsory. They are different. How do I still stay conform to the standard that I will still I can still operate that business, but I won't still go against the standard that the company has set in the US, still maintain the same standard, and I will still be in conformity to the standard of the business in the US, if that makes sense.
Okay, so standards are not different. It is the regulations that are different because you are playing in different space. Do you understand? So, but the standards are not different, right? However, um how you implement the standard may differ depending on the jurisdiction that you sit. In most cases, there are really not much differences. So the difference will just be in maybe some requirement from regulators, right? But the standards are still the same. So businesses, they have different branches all over. Okay, for instance, now, if you have a physical location, or let's say you have a business, right? Because of my experience with Ghana, the Bank of Ghana will require that you have a server domicile, right, within Ghana that is hosted in Ghana that serve as a backup wherever your resources are. You must have that in Ghana. That is their requirement. But that does not remove the fact that maybe if Nigeria do not state that, oh, you must have like a physical server within their jurisdiction, that does not mean you cannot have a backup on maybe another cloud infrastructure or maybe in a data center or something. Do you understand? But there are some requirements that can be peculiar to some jurisdiction, but does not necessarily mean there are differences in standards, but it can just be difference, maybe some difference in regulation. Do you understand? But once you
Yes.
are franchising, you have to follow the company's rule, the company's policy, the company's standard. That is why you will see that a lot of the filling station, petrol station that we see in Nigeria, they do not belong to, okay, let me use MRS, for example. Not every MRS filling station belongs to MRS. Some are franchised, but you will see that it is the same structure, the
Structure,
same
yeah.
color, the same logo. That is a standard that they have put in place. Do you understand? So, but let's now say, for instance, I'm just giving a scenario. You now want to build MRS, you want to franchise MRS in Ghana. You want to franchise
Yeah.
MRS in Ghana. As much as you are going
I
to follow
know.
of MRS in Nigeria, right? Ghana regulation, you have to still follow Ghana regulation. So if Ghana regulation have some certain level of tax that they put on petrols, it is different from the tax in Nigeria. So you cannot say because you are franchising, you are going to follow the tax in Nigeria. Do you understand? So it is those little
Yeah.
difference in regulation, but the standards are the same. You understand? The standards are the same, and then you have to follow through the standards.
Thank you very much.
All right, all right. Do you have any other question? Okay. All right. So we'll continue on Saturday. God keep us. I'll drop the recording tonight or tomorrow morning, and then I'll share the link with us. Right. All right. Good night, everyone.
Nice. So